The very idea the senator from Florida wants to put Social Security and Medicare in the chopping block every 5 years, I find to be somewhat outrageous. Just yesterday, he confirmed that he still likes his proposal. Well, I guarantee you, it will not happen. I will veto it.
President Biden in Tampa, Florida today, where he continued to blast Republicans over their calls to cut Social Security and Medicare, and he singled out one of the state senators in particular, Rick Scott. Nearly 5 million Florida residents got some form of Social Security in 2022. That didn't stop Scott from calling on Congress to renew the program every 5 years, a fact he appeared to forget today. Watch this.
Was it a mistake to propose this?
No. First off, nobody believes that I want to cut Medicare or Social Security. I've never said it.
But he wants to accuse us of something he's done. He had a bill that would do it, and he's fought and fought and fought to cut Medicare and Social Security. What a hypocrite.
Now, Biden's bill, by the way, was proposed almost 50 years ago in 1975. Rick Scott's was introduced last February. For more on this, I want to bring in Juanita Tolliver, MSNBC political analyst and host of Crooked Media's What a Day podcast, and Mark McKinnon, former advisor to both George W. Bush and John McCain, is also one of the co-hosts of The Circus on Showtime. It's great to have both of you with us. Mark, Republicans, they're really trying to walk back their comments, but it seems to me, and you certainly know this more than me, that this has been their MO all along.
Well, it has, and Rick Scott right there just reminds me of the great political adage that if you're explaining, you're losing. You know, anybody who's worked in politics anytime in the last 30 years knows that the one absolute third rail is Social Security. And so for Republicans, the leader of the Senate committee last year to not only embrace that, but put it out there, put it on paper, is one of the greatest self-inflicted political wounds or own goals that I've seen in a long, long time. And Joe Biden and Democrats are using it to their political advantage, and I suspect will throughout this year and next. They're not going to let it go. And by the way, part of the reason that the Republicans lost the Senate last year was that they had bad candidates, but it's also because a lot of the Democrats talked about this proposal from Rick Scott.
And it seems like, Juanita, this was a smart political move by the president since the State of the Union and how that all played out. Today, you had pamphlets with Senator Scott's plan put on every seat at President Biden's event. And it seems like the president, at least on this singular issue this week, has his footing going on the offense with the Republicans. Is this an effective strategy?
It's a highly effective strategy. And honestly, I want President Biden to go across the country and talk to seniors everywhere to drill down the message on who's trying to cut their benefits, who's trying to put Social Security and Medicare at risk. It's Republicans. And so emphasizing that point not only draws another contrast between Democrats and Republicans at a moment when we know Democrats are the ones who are trying to protect and help Americans, but it also gives Democrats yet another rallying cry, because we know Rick Scott's not going to stop giving these interviews. He's going to keep saying it. So it absolutely makes sense for Democrats to continue to hit Republicans over the head with this. And I hope that, again, they take this tour and keep it going. This drumbeat needs to continue, because the last thing you need is for seniors, who are one of the most reliable voting blocs in this country, to forget who's trying to come for their benefits.
And speaking of Republicans hitting Republicans, Mark, you brought up the Senate races earlier this year, or last year, I should say, in the midterms. Mitch McConnell, Rick Scott, they've kind of gone back and forth on candidate quality. Mitch McConnell today responded to Rick Scott in this radio interview. Watch.
It's just a bad idea. I think it will be a challenge for him to deal with this in his own reelection in Florida, a state with more elderly people than any other state in America.
So I feel like there's a little bad blood, there, between these two gentlemen since the midterms. What are the chances those comments actually make a difference?
Well, I mean, there's blood on the floor there, and Mitch McConnell just bounced him off of a committee that he wanted. Listen, if you could bet on politics in Vegas, I would bet on Mitch McConnell every single time. So Mitch McConnell's a very smart, savvy strategist, and he knows how badly. Well, he knows that Rick Scott's largely responsible for the fact that he's not the Senate Majority Leader.
Who do you go after next, Juanita? I mean, he went after Rick Scott today in Florida. Senator Mike Lee of Utah had his moment the other night during the State of the Union when he had that kind of dumbfounded look on his face that he was almost shocked. And then everyone over the last 24 hours or so have been playing that clip where he was speaking to donors privately saying that that's exactly what he wanted to do.
Look, I think that there is a laundry list of Republicans to go after. I'm looking at state level Republicans as well, like Governor Abbott, who we know is doing the absolute worst to criminalize abortion access, to cause harm to migrants and individuals seeking refuge in this country. Like, take your pick, right? Like, I think that, as I mentioned before, taking this on tour is critical. And we know the president's doing that. We know the vice president is out there. She was in Minnesota today. We know cabinet members are out there. And I think the effectiveness around this can't be underestimated when you think about also local press giving them this coverage, talking about all the work that Democrats have done, but again, emphasizing all of the harm that's coming from Republicans. And so if Democrats can launch a full court press that's sustained on a weekly basis all the way up to 2024, that makes things look really, really good for them.
Mark, let me get your thoughts on another senator here, Mitt Romney. First, he went after George Santos on the floor during the State of the Union. He had some sharp words for him. Now Axios is reporting that Mitt Romney's handing over, I believe, hundreds of personal emails to a reporter to write an upcoming book. What is Mitt Romney doing here, you think?
You know, this is a book I really can't wait to read. I think Mitt Romney's a fascinating character. He's confounded me over the years, as somebody who's been involved in Republican politics, because he turns himself into pretzels on the campaign, but he governs really well. And it's really clear that he's a thoughtful guy who has deep character and values, and he really cares about the country when it comes to fundamental issues like our democracy. And he's one of the few Republicans, I feel like I'm kind of on an island these days of Republican survivors, but he's one of those guys that keeps throwing out a life raft for us as somebody that we're proud of, we respect, and stands up at the right time.
Yeah, great leader. Maybe not a good politician, so to speak, but definitely a great leader.
Exactly.
In terms of the way he is carrying himself in these years. Juanita Tolliver, Mark McKinnon, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.